BJ O'Neill here with the Business Coaching Success Podcast. So glad you're here, where I share with you strategies, tools, and tips to be able to grow your business coaching practice to six figures and beyond as a Christian business coach. Let's jump in. Hey, BJ here again with another episode of the Business Coaching Success Podcast, talking today about clarity, consistency, and relevance, and how to make every prospect that you talk to listen. Okay? Powerful, powerful words. What we say, how we say it, how many times we say it, the way we say it, the tone we say it. Doesn't matter if it's out of your mouth or on an email or social media or text. The things that you say you must have a plan. You must think it through. You must take time to really follow a process to make sure that you're truly connecting with a prospect so that they're actually actively listening to what you say on how you can help them. All right. If you are listening on whatever platform, certainly Apple and Spotify, it'd mean the world to me if you would subscribe and give us a 5-star rating if you're getting value from this. If you're watching and listening on YouTube, subscribing and leaving a comment and rating will be amazing there. That's how you can help be a part of the community and get the word out to those just like you who are looking to be able to grow their impact and their income as a Christian business coach. Let's dive in. So 3 things I want to share with you that I think will help you potentially, at least, in your mind, make sure that you have a legitimate bona fide plan of action on how you're engaging what you're saying with your potential prospects. First, clarity attracts engagement. Clarity attracts engagement. So I want you to think just for a moment. If you're currently coaching and you're doing any type of activity to reach out to connect with prospects, you're reaching out to build relationships, you're reaching out to add value. If you haven't sat down and it's gotten really good, and some of this takes practice, by the way, but you first have to sit down and truly make sure that you have clarity in what you're saying. Because if you really want to increase the engagement, in other words, there's a friend of mine who is in the marketing space, and he talks about this, and it's all about when he says, how do you become the hunted? Well, you can't ever have people that really want to hear from you if you're not clear about what you do and what you say and how you're going to solve problems. So a clear and concise message, it cuts through the noise. And I get the question a lot about competition with other business coaches. Look, that's the least of your concerns. Your biggest competition is distraction of everything. It's a crowded marketplace. I was talking to a friend of mine that I'm helping through a campaign that they're doing, and the comment was made about how we did a similar campaign like 5 or 6 years ago. And I had to remind them, I'm like, look, so much has changed in 5 years, which is insane to say that. As a matter of fact, the campaigns that we're working through, TikTok wasn't even a thing when we did a similar campaign before. And so it's such a crowded marketplace, and you have to understand all alone when you're talking to a prospect, that being a business owner. I don't care if they're a startup. I don't care if they have their business that's $200,000 a year, or if they do $20 million a year. They're likely overwhelmed with information on a number of things that they're trying to solve and trying to do for themselves. So when we understand that they're likely hearing a lot of stuff, they're likely hearing a lot of noise, they're likely, getting distracted in multiple ways, it helps us to understand the purpose and the reason to why clarity is so critical to get engagement up. So when you have a well-defined message, it absolutely can capture attention instantly. So I want you to think about that for a moment. We'll use social media as an example. All right. So, imagine for a moment your prospect having their phone in their hand and they're scrolling, right? And what we call a pattern interrupt, what would be interruptive, intrusive to their current thought? And they could just be mindlessly scrolling. By the way, that's another part of distraction. Social media does offer that because it can kind of get our minds to go down a rabbit hole, right? And it's another one of those things. So what would cause that? Well, when there's a well-defined message that matters to them, no different than if it matters to you or me, that's a pattern interrupt, and that can capture attention instantly. So you want to create a message, what we call a message matrix, that defines your USP, your unique selling position, your proposition, I should say, your core benefits, and any kind of key differentiators. And there's multiple ways to do this, but you're essentially going to use that matrix as a base for all of your conversations. So phone calls, if you're networking and you're connecting with people in person, if you're making cold calls, if you're doing social media posts, if you're texting people, if you have an email address, whatever your communication channel is, you want this matrix, I'll say that 5 times, to be your base point of massaging in that conversation and that clarity, that message. If you've listened to any of my podcasts, watched training videos, see my emails, you're hearing that from me based upon you as a coach. We talk about similar themes all the time. And so, it's don't just do what I say, do what I do. So let me give you an example. If I'm a coach, I could kind of have a framework, if you will, and then break the framework up into several different ways. So I can say something like, I show business owners, or I show, you could say something like, I show overwhelmed business owners, or I show stuck business owners, right? I mean, you can give any kind of imagination and iteration to it. So I show business owners how to double their bottom line without spending any additional money. I do this by uncovering, hidden revenue streams they've overlooked and accelerating profits through targeted growth strategies. I can show you how this can be done for you in 5 minutes or less. So you can take something, and I'm just making that up, but you could use that as a basis point. And then you're going to use pieces of that at different times. So you could literally take the one line about accelerating profits through targeted growth strategies. You could do multiple trainings around that. You could actually, if I'm in a conversation with you at a networking event, I could actually pull out what an accelerated profit strategy could be. I could talk about that, right? I could do the same thing with the line about, hidden revenue streams that you probably have forgotten about or haven't even considered that you may have overlooked. And so these becomes a matrix that tons of different conversation that can kind of springboard off of and either run to it or run from it. I say run from it, meaning that your context is boiled out of the conversation. And you do this every day. So everything that you're saying, it all kind of stems from the same place. So as people are hearing you, which puts us to the next point of consistency, as they're consistently getting a message from you, they're starting to see, hear, and emotionally connect with the theme. The second thing is consistency builds trust. When you have that solid, that clarity, you're beginning to build engagement. As you're building that engagement, that consistency of that message begins to build trust, because prospects, they need to hear your message multiple times. We all do. Think about some of the things in your own personal life that you've thought about multiple times before you even just sought out further information, much less make a decision. And so again, when you look at that 80% of sales happens and occurs between the 5th and the 12th point of contact, that's the entire bedrock and point of why consistency builds trust. And so you want to make sure that you're retelling the story, that you're recounting the conversation, that you're leaning in and saying it in multiple different ways. But regardless of that, redundancy is the bedrock of growth. It really is. You want to be redundant in a certain way to where people really begin to connect and engage and build trust, so much to the point where they feel like they kind of know you. So how can you do that? Well, a couple of different ways. If you're consistent, one of them is using the calendar. I don't know who has said it. I've heard it multiple times. So maybe it's gone around a few times, but what gets scheduled gets achieved. What gets scheduled gets achieved. So if you have we'll call it a content calendar. All right. And let's say that you're going to incorporate, utilizing social media as you should at some level. Whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's TikTok, I'll let you make that decision on what's best for you. YouTube, LinkedIn, you don't have to go crazy. Okay. If you're really good at LinkedIn, maybe that's the right, and your audience is there, that's probably a good place to start. If you're building relationships, I've mentioned multiple times a friend of mine who lives in my neighborhood. He's an excellent networker. I don't mean just networking for business. He just is really good at building relationships. One of the ways that he does that in our community is that, number one, he is consistently going to coffee shops and, the breakfast brunch type of places in our community. And he gets to know a lot of people at those places. And then he friends a lot of those people on Facebook and LinkedIn, probably Instagram too. I'm not sure. And so they're getting to know him through all of his social media posts, and he's really good at just creating engaging questions and whatnot. And so one of the things that he does is say, hey, there's a coffee shop here called Just Love. Hey, I'm going to be at Just Love this morning at 7:30. I'd love to connect with you. If you're around, come hang. And he'll have 3 or 4 or 5 people to show up. We call him the mayor because he knows so many people. But all that to say is that determine where your market really is. Start with kind of one or two of those. And I'm just using social media as an example. But this goes along with sending recurring emails. If you're getting names, as you should, and information from networking events, perhaps you're doing marketing workshops, maybe that you're doing cold calling, whatever. As you're collecting your database, you should be actively engaging with sending them something on a consistent basis. If it's once a week, a couple of times a week, you have to make the decision on what you can afford to do time-wise, because it all works. But putting it all on the calendar is my point. So let's say you send out 1 email per week. Well, what day do you want to do that? Just to make it easy. Maybe it's not the same every single day, but you just want to make sure it's planned out. Maybe you make several different posts every single week. Maybe you do a podcast, right? Just like I do. Like I publish this podcast on Tuesdays religiously every single week. It's on the calendar. It's a part of my plan. It's a part of what I do, right? And so over time, what happens is if you're flexible, you're starting to figure out what's really working for you, and you're going to spend more time there, or develop ways to, get help to get the message out. We have coaches on our coaching team who, they do, 2 to 3, marketing workshops. We call them profit acceleration workshops it's a part of our entire done for you system that they use. And that's a part of their calendar. And they spend a lot of time in their messaging inviting people to that event. All right, where you get 5, 7, 10 people in a room and teach them some content, which we give them all the content to teach. So consistency. So if you do a workshop style and you're doing 1 or 2 or 3 by design on the calendar every single month, that is consistency. That is consistency builds trust. Let's say that you're engaging with somebody and you see them 2 or 3 times a month. Well, maybe there's a small group or a networking event, or you run into them at the coffee shop, your favorite place to go, a couple times a week, whatever the case may be. And let's say you do a marketing workshop style and you are inviting them. Well, and they haven't come yet, if you've invited them 2, 3, 4 times, that's consistency. They're starting to, sense. If you have what we call a profit acceleration workshop, and you're making that invitation multiple times, they've never come over, a period of a couple of months, and you've reached out to them 3 or 4 times, that's consistency. They're getting to know what you do. They're starting to hear the same kind of language, and that gets them to get closer to you and build that trust. Third point, last point, relevance resonates. Let me say that again. Relevance resonates. So going back to the point with number 1, where you got to have clarity to attract engagement. Well, if that clarity that you have about your message, if it's not relatable and it doesn't resonate with your target market, then you got some homework to do. Because this matters in a big way, because your message needs to resonate with your prospects. Here's the big ones: pain points, their needs, and their desires. They need to resonate with your prospects' pain points, needs, and desires. That's the reason, going back to how you can interrupt someone quickly with the right message. If that message connects in a relevant way to their pain, guess what? All the clutter, and if you're not watching via video, I'm kind of parting the sea like the Red Sea. All that clutter just gets parted, and you get someone focused on your message. And now trust begins to go up. So you want to invest time in understanding your target audience. Here's a way to do that. Here's a way to, it's not even just about creating an avatar and tailoring the message. I'm going to give you a real world way to do two things at once. All right. Kill two birds with one stone. To where, number one, at the networking level, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce's, the BNIs of the group, or whatever, and to pick 10 to 20, I would go to 20 businesses that you can get some time with. And by the way, if you reach out one time, they might not respond to you. You got to do it multiple times. And you're just going to simply, hey, we are building some data around the biggest pain points that roofers go through or dentists go through. Like, get specific to that business. Let's say that you're going to find a roofer, a plumber, and a home builder. I'm just making those up. You want to have at least 3 in every single category. By the way, I'm not even talking about you focusing on that niche. I'm just talking about business owners in general. So if you were to pick the roofing industry, the plumbing industry, home builders industry, home builders, if you were to accountants, financial planners, I mean, the list goes on. Make a list and then attempt to get into 3 of them, because you're either going to get completely different answers or very similar answers, which is exactly what you're looking for. But you can reach out to them and just say, we're looking to build some data on the biggest pain points and the challenges of business owners in the area. And I've got 5 questions, blah, 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 blah. I'll buy you lunch, I'll buy you coffee, whatever. Or you could even do that at the end of a networking event. And why would this matter? Because number 1, you're going to get the data that you need for relevancy. Number 2, you're building your prospects list. Okay? You're building your prospects list. And so that matters in a big way. If you're watching the video, you just saw some balloons, I think, come across. I don't know why. No clue. But nevertheless, I guess that's where they'll be celebrating. You see, you're building consistency, but you're building your prospects. And think about it. If you sit down with 20 different businesses and you begin to ask them questions, you're building some relationship. You're building some rapport on some of those people. You can pull through into your system to make it a relationship to potentially they hire you as a strategist and a coach. All right. So 2 ways to do that. So you got some homework to do maybe. Clarity attracts engagement. Consistency builds trust, and relevance resonates. Each one of these points, it emphasizes why your message matters regardless of how you're talking, where you're talking, platform, in-person cold calling, doesn't matter. It's critical that you have redundancy in what you're saying, and that it's attached and being attractive to your preferred client. Okay. If you are curious about what we do here at Business Coach Mastery, you may have heard a few podcasts, you've got some emails, maybe, I don't know the case, but you've heard us talk about specializing in helping seasoned Christian men with a done-for-you 6-figure business coaching business. If you're curious about what that means, you're interested in increasing your impact and income as a strategist and helping those with businesses and help them grow and help them to succeed at their goals. If you're curious about what that sounds like, you can go to businesscoachmastery.com. That's businesscoachmastery.com. There's a place there you can get some information, or you can even book a quick call, and we'll talk about it as well. All right? Until next time, take care.